Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here with us. I'm Camille Osmer, and my friend Kelly. You
And
want to
I'm Kelly
introduce
Keebler.
yourself? Yay!
And we are two behavior consultants shooting the shit about dog training.
We
Um,
are.
Today, our topic is going to be about resource guarding because this is near and dear to both of our hearts. But before we do that, Camille, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. How
Yeah,
about you?
you survived
Yeah?
the storm that we just had in North
Oh,
Carolina.
my
We just got hit with
word. It was
bad storm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the stoplights went out and the flooding is everywhere. The creek behind, kind of across the street from my house is just crazy flooded, like in all the yards.
Mhm.
It was unbelievable how much flooding there was. The rain came down so fast. It was
Mhm.
nuts.
Yeah, I'm glad that everyone's okay. It looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Yeah, so today we're here to discuss resource guarding. Now, before we begin, it is important to mention, and we will be continuing to mention throughout the entire podcast, that there is no cure for resource guarding. And the training plan does look different for every person, every case, every family, everybody. We want to advise you to reach out to us because we offer virtual training or to a local professional, which if you want help finding a local professional, we can help you with that as well. If you are in a situation where your dog is resource guarding and you're looking at a bite case.
We can't stress enough how important it is to find a professional to work with. The reason we say that is not because we want you to call us, for example, but
We do.
but we're happy to help. But honestly, resource guarding is so misunderstood in the bigger scheme of things, just like a lot of dog training is. And so we just want to make sure, that when you do seek out help, that you get the right kind of help and you get someone who's knowledgeable and knows what's going on so you can get the best help. There's no need to do it over and over and over 14 times till you find the right trainer. We're happy to help you find a trainer in your area if you'd like.
We will have links to both of our websites in the show notes. So if anyone does want to reach out, and we will have a link to our Facebook page where hopefully by now a general discussion about what we're talking about is happening as well.
Yeah. And we do
Um,
both really enjoy resource guarding,
Yeah, and we're
those
going to probably
cases.
discuss why in this podcast.
Yes.
Before we continue, Camille, do you want to get us started with what does resource guarding mean to you?
So, resource guarding is when a dog or a human guards something that's valuable to them. So it can be food, it can be toys for a dog, food, toys, um, positions like locations. It could be you can guard dogs can guard from other dogs can guard from people, or specifically children and not adults, or
What does it
men
look
and
like
not
when it comes
women.
to guarding?
So when you think about a dog guarding, you begin to realize that you think of the grouse, snarl, snap, or the freeze. That's the biggest thing to me is that, let's say your dog's laying over on the floor chewing a bone, and you walk into the room and you see him freeze. That freeze looks like he's usually over the bone a little bit, but he's watching you kind of walk into the room, and you see him just freeze to wait and see what you're doing. That's a telltale sign. But growling, for example, if you walk too close to his food bowl, anything like that, anything that's just kind of like, that's not normal behavior.
So really all you're describing is how our dogs communicate they want space, that what they
Yeah.
have is important to them and that they are uncomfortable with you approaching essentially, or a dog or person, whatever.
Yeah, we call it distance increasing behaviors. They
Exactly.
want you to increase the distance. They want you to go away and leave them alone so they can have their stuff, whatever it is.
Exactly. And I think that it is really important to emphasize that the dog decides what the resource is. And you did
Oh
say
yeah.
this. I'm just reiterating that because there's a lot of times that we think that, well, it's their food bowl and I buy their food and they should be grateful that I'm buying their food. They can't tell me that I can't approach them when they're eating. No, they never got that memo. So to
Right.
expect your dog to respect you because you purchased the food, they don't understand how the world works in that way. I think that in the human form, if I am sitting here drinking um a glass of wine and someone comes over to take it from me, I am going to growl, snarl, and snap at them as well.
Right. The
That's
waiter comes to take it before the wine's actually gone. You're like, no, 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 wait,
exactly
wait, wait.
right. The Keeblers are well known for resource guarding food. In the house, when we ate, if there was something really good, we were like guarding our plate so that no one else can reach for food off of our plate.
That's funny.
Not very healthy now that I'm thinking about it, but
I love it.
so our that's yeah, and I think that that covers essentially what resource guarding looks like, and we're going to talk a little more about, um resources that you want to go to. I think one of our favorites is Jean Donaldson's book, Mine.
Yeah, definitely. So Jean Donaldson has a wonderful book, Mine, which Kelly just mentioned. It is such a great book. It's very practical and straightforward. Do I think somebody should go read the book and then try to train their dog? Not really, but it's a great book to help. And then you understand your dog trainer better. Let's put it that way, or your behavior consultant better. Um, um, so what we talked about the distance increasing behaviors.
Mhm.
Jean Donaldson says hard stares, growling, snarling, snapping, biting without maiming force are the legal conflict resolution behaviors in society. That's what we call
Mhm.
ritualized aggression. It's behaviors that dogs legally in their dog society can give that say, I need distance, I need you to move away, this is mine. And we should recognize it as that. And a lot of times we think, like you were saying, oh, well, you can't bark at me. I gave you that food, or I bought that food for you, or whatever it is. But in their mind, they're doing it the right way, which is the ritualized aggression, which I think is really, really important to understand. It's what they do. It's evolutionary. Well, I do think it's fair to tell people that it's truly an evolutionary behavior, and it's kind of interesting that we're still seeing those evolutionary behaviors in our world today, where they don't have to scavenge for food. They don't have to scrounge and try to protect things because they have it in abundance now in our homes. But that hasn't fixed this thing in their DNA that says they have to do it.
And I
And it's
mean,
not always DNA, but I want to point
no,
that out.
no,
But
and that's just, I mean, I think that in the past, I don't even know, time is a construct, right? But like, I remember that we are now saying resource guarding is genetic. I don't know.
I think it's both.
Okay. So it, like, in my studying, I've accepted it to be more genetic.
Right.
Uh, but whether it is or isn't, I think that this is something that will never go away, right?
No,
Like,
yeah, I don't think so either. I think you're right.
even for us, like, if you have any value, if you find anything valuable, then there's nothing that's going to make your need to keep that valuable resource go away. I think
Mhm.
that's just natural and normal and evolutionary. Yeah, I feel like that could be Darwinism. There is some source of, you need this component of resource guarding to thrive amongst the competitors.
Well, and we know that there are certain breeds that actually are more commonly known, and it's not to single out any certain breed. It's just that, oh yeah, okay. It just kind of makes sense to us as trainers because we see it a lot in those particular breeds. But it's not to single out any particular breed because it can be across the board. I mean, it can be any breed at all. So it's not to single out one breed. But in saying it's genetic is what I was thinking when you were saying genetic. But I can't count the number of clients I've had who stick their hand in a bowl of food while the dog's trying to eat. And I'm like, well, if you did that to me, I'd be mad too. Like, that's just stupid. But they've been told to do that. It's not that the client was trying to be rude or anything else. They were told to do it to teach their dog not to guard.
And they typically, clients are really proud when they say that too. I've been doing the good
Yes,
thing and doing
yes.
the
I've
right
been
thing, putting
doing
my
it.
hand in their dog food. And I mean, good for you
It's
for trying the
amazing.
right thing. Seriously, yay for the effort. But there's two things I want to combine, and this might be a completely anecdotal thing for me. But growing up, everyone had golden retrievers. Completely,
Mhm.
like, that was the dog, and it kind of is a little in many circles too now. But what we did growing up was we showed and quote unquote played with our dog, where we would approach them when they would have a bone and they would growl. And the game was, how intensely could we get them to growl by how we approach
Yeah.
the bone.
Like the videos online.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And I do think that that has happened so much over the line that it is
Hmm.
one of the reasons golden retrievers have a big predisposition to resource guard.
Well, and probably because they were so popular. You're right. Because they were
That's
so popular and so many people did this to them that it got passed down. Yeah, yeah, I could totally see that happening.
I do. I think that in golden retriever specific, like especially because everyone had them, that need to protect is really even more genetic because of what we've done to our lovely dogs. Um,
That, and I think it's passed down to golden doodles too.
yeah. Oh, I mean, anecdotally, I see that too.
Anecdotally, absolutely. No, no,
And
no
that's the dangerous
studies.
part of this, right? So
Yeah.
Neil and I with a history or a certification of behavior consultant. We just talked about a little bit of ethology, a little bit of behavior. Like we're talking once again, what we're saying is not what everyone else believes. What we're saying is not always everyone's perspective, but the reason why we want to bring this to you is just to create the conversation. And maybe if you're thinking of resource guarding in a different light, it might help you with one of your cases or even with one of your dogs if you think of it as from a different perspective, I guess.
So we've talked a little bit about what it looked like, the freeze, the growling, the snarling, the snapping, or biting. You can go all the way. But let's talk about some of the fallacies about resource guarding, which like we were saying, that people have been taught the craziest, wildest things. And often they're the very reason it's happening, like sticking your hand in the food bowl or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, One of the fallacies is that it's abnormal. And I think based on what we just
That's a big
said,
statement.
it's not
Right.
abnormal for the dog. It's abnormal for us, and we think it's a poor behavior, but it's not abnormal for the dog.
Right.
Which I think is one of the reasons why I like it so much, because I really want to explain it to people and have them realize, oh, you mean he doesn't just hate me? No, not at all. He doesn't hate
Mhm.
you.
Well, and I feel
Um,
like it does create like that kind of vibe of my dog wants more than what I have, or like it does create a whole conflict when people take it personally.
yeah, yeah, no, and it can. But again, that's why I like resource guarding, because I love to be able to explain it more,
Hmm.
so that they understand where I'm coming from when we start to train.
Hmm.
Genetic versus, nature versus nurture. It,
Both are at
it can
play at
be
all
either
times.
or, both, whatever. Um, that it can be cured by abundant resources. Like we said a few minutes ago, now that we have all this food and everybody's taking good, basically taking good care of their animals, um, you would think that, oh, you have enough food, you don't need to resource guard.
Hmm.
Or you have 50 toys, why do you have to have every single one of them? Um, it's not about giving them more, and it's not about the fact that you spoiled them. A lot of people say, oh, I've spoiled them, and I let her do whatever she wants.
Well, can I challenge you, Camille? Because you just said it's not about giving them more, but isn't giving them more one of the techniques you could use with a resource guarder?
It is, but if that's the case,
Hmm.
it definitely is, and you can try it. I do have a dog that seemed to be guarding tennis balls, so we got a big bucket, we filled it up with balls, and she had so many balls she couldn't even begin to think about resource guarding them.
Hmm.
But in my opinion, that's a rare fix. It's not that
Yeah.
it doesn't happen,
Hmm.
but it's a rare fix.
Hmm.
Like, it needs to be trained a different way in most cases. And to me, that's management. That's not training.
I will say, in my experience with resource guarders, that resource guarding is only one piece of the puzzle. And it may be why they're pulling me onto the case. It may be
Uh-huh.
that our dog is growling or snapping or snarling in these situations. But really, when I look at the animal as a whole, bringing back Sarah Owing's emotional cup reference again, um, their cup is being emptied by so many other things, or
Yeah,
cup's not being filled. There's no enrichment. They're bored. So my perspective of some of these dogs when I go on resource guarding cases is they think it's their job to protect their resources.
sure.
They do nothing else all day long, and this is what my job is.
Well, you and I take a very holistic view of cases, I think. We want to see the whole dog. We want to see what kind of enrichment do they have? What kind of mental stimulation do they have?
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to just train resource guarding. I'm going to say, hey, let's look at the whole picture. And I think you probably would too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, the other fallacy, I just wanted to throw it out there, is that my dog's dominant. And I can't even begin to tell you that's not why your dog's resource guarding. It has nothing to do with dominance.
And we have a whole podcast in the making as far as dominance in that conversation. And we want to bring in a veterinary behaviorist for that conversation. When a dog is resource guarding, they are not trying to show you that they are more alpha than you.
Exactly.
That is
Exactly. And that's exactly what I meant.
Mhm.
They're not trying to show you they're better than you, or they own more stuff, or they come first before you.
They're harder. Yeah,
It's
no.
not the way dogs work. It's not the way they think.
Thank you. That's a really good point, Camille. And
It's the
like,
way humans do it.
and that's just it. I mean, humans make it very, oh, that's going to be a podcast. We have to bring ourselves in. We're
Yeah.
taking resource guarding today.
All right.
That is a good follow. Go ahead.
So let's talk about some of the things that you think about when you see a resource guarding case. Like, how do you think about prognosis? How do you think about, hey, this is going to work out, or hey, this is going to get a little scary?
So really for me, the biggest thing with resource guarding, it goes to management. And I know for you, Camille, when we were discussing this podcast, you go to, is it dog, dog, or human dog?
Mhm.
And that's where you typically start. And I think that the more I thought about it, I think I do the same thing, but really it's more as far as if the dog is feeling this is mine kind of
Mhm.
feel, the first thing I want to do is find out how frequently it's happening. And in order to figure out how frequently it's happening, it is important to know if we're dealing with a dog that's resource guarding from dogs or resource guarding from humans. Do you want to go into more of that?
Well, we can. I think you approach them a little bit differently, with dog to dog dog or dog human, or even like dog location, like if the dog is guarding location. But here's one thing I really want to think about is how many triggers are there? That's a huge,
Mhm.
huge part of how I think about a prognosis for a case and a training plan
Now,
to put
really quickly,
together.
let me interrupt you. And this might be an
Hmm.
obvious answer, and just my brain in the second that we're recording, I can't think about it. But when you're talking about a trigger, are
Uh-huh.
you talking about the other being approaching, or are we talking about the valuable object?
I'm thinking more about the valuable object.
Okay.
So I've had dogs and my own dog, resource guards toys. She
Hmm.
just does. And I've worked with her on it, and she's so much better. And but I'm always going to watch her around other dogs. She doesn't guard from people, but I'm always going to watch her. But that is her one and only thing. She doesn't guard food. She doesn't guard location. She doesn't guard, um, you know, anything. Um, but then I've had a 12-week-old puppy who literally guarded everything. I mean, guarded the cover on the car that was laying in the grass, just went over and sat on it and started guarding it,
Well, and
or guarded visiting children's raincoats.
to take it a step further, would you say that if resource guarding is left unchecked, that it will generalize to more things?
I'm not going to say it absolutely will, but it can. Yeah, definitely can. But
Interesting.
in this dog's case, because he was so young, he was guarding way too many things. And honestly, we had to get him out of the house. There were too many young kids in that house. It just wasn't going to work for them.
Yeah, and then that absolutely could be a prognosis for some cases. Um, I can tell.
But
I'm trying to
for the
catch
most,
as we have this conversation because I'm gonna run down so many different rabbit holes. So go ahead, continue your thought.
well, but for the most part, you don't see dogs that have that many triggers in most cases.
Hmm.
A lot of cases are they're going to guard location or food and toys, maybe, or person.
I will. I mean, so yeah, and I think that because they're the most extreme resource guarding cases. I came on site and this dog already had moon eye, meaning you could see the white around their pupils. You could see the commissures when they were panting because they were just panting with a wide open mouth and they just couldn't function. And everything was a resource that they must guard. And
Always on alert. Yeah.
yeah, and cases like that, I will say that I'm looking more at management and even any case, right? Management's my first go-to. So we recognize where and when it's happening and how can we change it moving forward so the dog doesn't feel this conflict is
Hmm.
typically where I start.
Well, in management, I think is important in anything, any case you're working on. We always work for management because we don't want them to practice the behavior that they're doing while
Mhm.
we're trying to change their feeling about that behavior and about that situation.
And
So
and
yeah,
another
totally agree.
example of this, let me just because that's a really giant concept that we talk about all the time. If I'm trying to quit smoking and I wake up and smoke a cigarette every morning, I'm not going to quit smoking. Same thing with
Right.
resource guarding. If we're trying to help a dog not feel that conflict and not feel the need to resource guard, then we need to really create the environment so that they aren't resource guarding and practicing that
Yep.
behavior. Go ahead, continue.
Structure the environment so they don't have a chance to practice it. Just like if you're teaching, reactivity out the window, I'm going to close the window when I'm not working and open it so that I can train, but I'm going to keep him closed so he can't practice that behavior when I'm trying to change his behavior with it in that situation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, management, absolutely. The other thing I think about a lot is owner compliance.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Big part of the puzzle.
some owners just want management. They just want you to teach you how to make everybody safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's
Yep.
not, I'm not here to judge. If that's what you want, absolutely. I'll be happy to teach you that.
Well, I mean, if
Um,
your dog feels more comfortable eating their bully stick when they're in their crate,
yeah,
then yay,
put them
we're
in the
all
crate.
happier and safer. Like,
Yeah, put them in the crate. I
yeah.
mean, it's okay. As long as they don't start guarding the crate when you try to come over to it and open it and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely. If your dog feels better like that, that's fine. The first thing I would do if a dog was guarding their bowl would be from other dogs and stuff is okay, put them in a room by themselves, shut the door, let them eat. Just let them have peace, let them shut down and enjoy their food and not feel any pressure like another dog's behind me coming up to get my stuff.
I'm going to quickly add the caveat again of there is no cure for resource guarding, and the training plan looks different for every case. What we're describing here is absolutely one way to stop practicing the behavior. Stop practicing the negative, I say negative feels, the guardy feels, we'll say. Um, this is not there's no fixing resource guarding. So what we're describing is one of the tools that we use to help keep everyone safe, to help our dogs and our clients' dogs feel more comfortable. Um, I do think that management across the board, though, is really regardless of what training plan you're doing, this is really an essential piece of the puzzle is that the dog does not have to experience this feeling frequently.
Yeah.
Or
And management could also be training a muzzle,
yes,
so that everybody stays safe while you're training, depending on the situation. Again, it's very individual.
I will tell you though, because the one of
A
my most
tether.
difficult cases was when the dog then started resource guarding the muzzle,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
right?
that's really interesting. Yeah.
So this is another point in the sense that the dog decides what the resource is, and if you're starting to train them that the muzzle is the resource,
And you're
they're
making the
like,
muzzles fantastic. You did a great job.
yes, this is why resource guarding is not one of those things that we hand a pamphlet out and say, "Hey, go do it on your own." This
Yeah,
is why we're saying reach out to us
that's exactly.
if you're dealing with resource guarding.
Because there are so many elements that go into any training plan. And honestly, good certified trainers study to figure out the best way to help each and every individual dog. A study of one. Absolutely.
And the hard part, I mean, if there was one way to do it, it'd be a lot easier for all of us.
Right. Yeah.
I think that sometimes I go on cases and I see so many different techniques that could be successful that might get overwhelmed with all the successful solutions that we could have,
Yeah.
and it really, your point being what the client wants, what the client deems
Yes.
as a successful prognosis.
For their situation. For
Exactly.
those people in that situation and that home and that dog. Yeah.
Exactly. I think a factor that definitely needs to go into your prognosis, though, is not only the age of the dog, but
Mhm.
also the age of the people living with the dog.
Oh, sure. Or even the impulsivity of the dog. Do they have any impulse control? Or do the people living with
Yeah.
the dog have any impulse control? Maybe it's a house full of kids, and that's a tough place for resource guarding dogs to be because
Well,
they're going to be constantly stressed.
depending on the parents.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everything's everything's just a small part of the big picture.
And I say that kind of surprised, to be honest, because I've been having some really impressive parents lately that I walk in and the kids are just so hands are folded, they're listening to me speak, they're respecting the dog's communication, and I'm like, "What world am I living in?"
Nice.
Doesn't make
Nice.
possible. They exist. I feel like if I had kids, it would not look like that. But I think that for me,
Um,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say one other thing that I think about in the prognosis of a case is bite inhibition.
Good point.
So when you think about bite inhibition, just for anybody who's listening that might not know, bite inhibition, dogs have serious power in their jaws, right? And they have
Mhm.
these big teeth. Bite inhibition is the dog's ability to control how hard they bite. So, when you see dogs, for example, playing, they open their mouths and they kind of got them around each other's necks and they're just roughhousing and having a blast and it's going back and forth, a lot of back and forth play. They're showing extreme inhibition and they're just mouthing, right? It can even look a little scary because they might even growl. Like my dog loves to growl when she's messing around. But the bite inhibition means that she's not going to hurt anyone. Dogs that, for example, are really like I have a dog who is extremely serious about resource guarding and has bitten the other dog in the house, bit down to the point of stitches. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no messing around. The dog is not only resource guarding, but he's not messing around. Like he has no inhibition
And
for the warning part.
to put this in terms of people, I was the bratty kid sister that would poke my brother. And my brother would say, Kelly, stop. And I would keep poking him. And he would push me away. And I would keep poking him. And then he would put me in a headlock. And I would keep poking him until the headlock hurt enough. To this day, my brother has learned that if I poke him, he puts me in a headlock. He knows the level
It's kind of the
of
go-to.
exactly. He knows his escalation, right? His bite
That's
inhibition
funny.
is I know the strength I'm going to use on this headlock. That's his bite inhibition.
So
Um,
that is actually a lot of inhibition because he knows
yes,
exactly where he needs to be to make it work without
exactly.
hurting you. Yeah,
Exactly.
I like
Now,
that.
the part of this that can become dangerous for our dogs, right, is if Scott has put me in a headlock where I've passed out, now we know Scott doesn't have the inhibition to keep things safe.
Yep.
And moving forward, if I start poking Scott, I'm putting myself at a risk to pass out.
Hmm.
And this is what we're talking about with bite inhibition with dogs. If a dog has done, for example, level 3 bite, then moving forward, I'm going to expect a level 3 bite in the future because that's their level of bite.
Minimum,
If
because
not,
that's what worked.
exactly. So
So
this is extremely important in the prognosis.
just as a little quick side, do you want to explain what a level 3 bite is? Not specifically, just that there are levels, I guess is what I was
Yeah, no,
gonna.
absolutely. So I'm using Dunbar's scale. I know that there's a few different ones. Level 1 is there's no puncture. Level 2 is there's scratching and tiny punctures, but less than what, 3/4 of an inch?
Mm, yeah, I think even smaller actually. But yeah,
Okay.
it's more
Um,
of a scratch, it's not
it's
a
superficial.
cut. Yeah, superficial. That's a good word.
Level 3 is maybe if it's multiple bites, it's like less than 3, right? It's something along fewer bites.
3 level 1 bites.
Hmm.
Or one bite that is a quarter
A
inch of
quarter
the
of an inch.
dog's tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Level 4 is deeper. Level 4 is you're
Yep.
looking at there are multiple bites. It is deep. You're seeing some skin.
Right.
The meat underneath the epidermis, essentially. Um, on the Dunbar is level 5 death, or is that level 6?
6.
Okay. So 5 is even more of a mauling.
Well, and so really what I just wanted to point out is that that's how it's a tool we use to judge prognosis for behavior cases.
There's a new scale being developed, and the reason why I'm even struggling to name the levels of the scale is if a dog bites a child with the same power that they bite me, it's got to look really different.
Mhm.
So these numbers in my head for that reason have become kind of a construct. Granted, this is how
Yes.
we communicate. This is how we say how bad it is. Yes, we do have a general understanding that a level 4 bite is very, very serious, and we're looking
Sure.
at a bad case, you know? But with that said, there's a lot of room for improvement with this bite scale.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And they're, I know they were working on it for a long time, but I never really saw anything come of it. But yes, you think about, I think especially about elderly people with really paper thin skin. I watched a service dog hurt their elderly person, and all she did was push off from the floor, and her nail caught the woman's foot, and her foot just bled like crazy. The
Mhm.
dog wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just an accident. But that kind of, bite to me,
That's a
or that kind of
level
scrape to
1.
me, it might not have been really anything,
Exactly. So that what you
Yeah,
described as a level 3 bite, but to us it would have been a level 1.
yeah, yeah. Wouldn't have been. It might have been a bruise. So
But the
anyway, I
whole
don't want to go
reason
down a rabbit hole
Oh,
with
yeah,
it, but
no,
I
but
I
thank
just
you.
wanted people to understand it's a tool that we use to be able to talk about what we saw,
And I appreciate
or
that. Thank you so much. And I think that another important component going back to our last episode about labels is if Camille and I are talking about a bite, we absolutely might say this is level 3, but we also might say, all right, so are we talking about multiple bites? Like we're still going to probably ask more information. It does not get, it gives a piece of the puzzle.
yeah, yeah, like
Exactly.
everything.
I really wish that we could come on this podcast and say, this is your answer, follow this rule book, and there is, you're going to be right. That would be so,
I'd love to be put out of a job. I really would.
yeah,
Like that wouldn't it be the best?
yeah.
But and this is why we call it the cookie crumbles, because there are so many parts that go into the cookie and so many pieces that fall off that we have to think about and put them back together. Or that's the way I think of it when I think of cookie crumbles. It's not one thing. It's not a solid block of wood or anything. It's lots and lots of parts and pieces that go together to make the whole. And that's what all this is. That's their tools that help us decide how to proceed.
Before we move on to different techniques we use to work with resource guarding, and once again, techniques, learner study of one, we are just
Yeah.
talking about techniques we use. I want to talk a little bit about the age portion of resource guarding
Mhm.
because we typically don't see resource guarding before adolescence.
Right.
Unless there's another piece of the puzzle that's really significant. Like I was dealing with a puppy golden, granted golden, genetic, but still under 4 months old that was intensely resource guarding. And the conversation was the owners needed to be less severe with their punishment. When
Mhm.
their dog resource guard, they turned into Cujo, the people turned into Cujo, and the dog was
Which makes the dog
getting more
worse.
intense to
Yes. Yeah.
therefore then turning into It was just a whole thing. Once I had them incorporate a sing-song Mickey Mouse voice when they felt the dog was getting frustrated or conflict, um, things started de-escalating more quickly than I thought it would at this intensity. It was really cool to see. But
Nice.
the reason why I say that is beginning of adolescence around 7 to 10 months, depending on sex, age, and all that. Um, that's when Pluto started resource guarding, Um, adolescence, I think, is when we start seeing the attitudes of less of the fun puppy of I'm dumb and everything's fun and the world is grand
La
and
la 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 la.
that's my young dumb puppy. Comes 7 to 10 months, now I have an adolescent teenager, I say 13-year-old, that's like, no, I want it. I want it. And like they just are silly but in a way of like, no, I think I need to do this. Like it's just so different. If
Hmm.
I'm having a resource garter happen around a year and a half to 2 years, typically that means more business behind the dog's communication.
Sure. Yeah.
And I say this and I can hear people running with this. So this is absolutely loose. But the reason why I'm saying this is depending on how long the dog's been practicing resource guarding, depending on the age of when it started, depending on their age now, like this is not my dog is resource guarding. What do I do?
Right.
I still want to study more neurobiology courses in the canine brain about what makes them want to protect their resources more, or even more so in the adolescent brain, the value of everything changes so drastically every day
Hmm.
that this is where resource guarding can get a little messy as well.
Yeah. Again, it's a
So
study of one. It
yeah,
matters. Lots and lots of things matter.
I,
Definitely age.
I think age is such a big component for my current clients, of what I'm
Hmm.
seeing of, because come a dog, and I'm even thinking of myself, right? Growing up, well, there's a lot of therapy that I needed, but growing up, if someone said something to me
Don't
that,
we all?
right? If someone said something that made me feel like I'm not good at what I'm doing, I would posture up. I would be like, I'm sorry, excuse me, let me show you you're wrong. I'm going to prove you, blah, 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 right? Like I would want to prove them wrong and really just what they said would affect me differently than
Hmm.
now. Whether that's because my frontal lobe has closed now, whether because any number of factors that I've learned, right? Now, if
Sure.
someone was to say the same thing to me now, I could hear it and be like, whatever, have a nice day. I'm going to go do this now. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
our dogs have that ability as well with age if we give them time and space to learn that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure if I was trying to make a point at all or just talking at this point.
Well, so I was thinking about some cases too that well, I had this one case and talk about client compliance.
Hmm.
Holy cow, she was amazing. Um, they had no idea there was any resource guarding until a neighbor or a friend came over and gave their dogs like a higher value kind of treat, like a bone type thing to chew.
Hmm.
And there were two dogs in the house, and every time they came close, they realized he started growling, the people.
Hmm.
And they're like, and they had no idea he would resource guard anything because he'd never done it before. And so this particular dog, for this dog, it worked. We set up a thing where he watched us. We asked him, we taught a really good drop it. We asked him to drop it. He watched us pick it up, and he watched us with a knife of peanut butter, slab some peanut butter on it, and give it right back.
Hmm.
So in this particular case for that dog, it worked to show him, hey, when our hand comes close, something better is going to happen.
Yeah.
And you get the original thing.
Yeah.
And we took it so slow. It was very, very careful, very, very, it's not trying to trick the dog. We were right in front of the dog saying, hey, this is it. This is, if you'll just give it up, I'm just going to make it better. Here, you can have it back.
Let me ask you something.
Um,
How many sessions did you have with those clients?
4.
Okay. And the reason why I'm saying this, because I heard what you just said, and this is what we do for a living, right?
Yeah.
This is what we do for a living. So for someone else to hear, well, you just grab it, you put something else on it, you give it back to the dog, they learn that it's good. No,
Yeah.
there is a process, there is a way to work through this.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that you break it down so small,
Mhm.
because let's face it, if you just reach out and grab it, the dog's gonna be mad. That's the whole point. So yeah, we broke it down super small, and you know what that client did? She sent me videos showing me what she was doing and
Awesome.
showing me her training sessions,
Hmm.
so I could immediately say, "Hey, that looks great. Why don't you try this?" Or you
Hmm.
know what? Let's back up a little bit and let's go back to this because he needs to be really good here before you make it tougher.
And
Splitting behaviors.
I love that. And really just to normalize the necessity of video, right?
Oh, it's the
Now,
best.
and
Everybody should take advantage of videos.
yeah, including us. And I need to be better at it. I'll raise my hand and say I need to be better with my
Me
sleep.
too. Yeah, totally.
But the point of me saying this is if I am working on a resource guarding case with, say, Pluto, right? And I'm watching, let's say, his eyes, and I know his eyes dilate when he starts feeling the resource guard he feels. But I'm
Right?
not even thinking about his tail or his ears or his body, I'm focused on one thing. This is where having a video helps because
Yes.
in the moment you're not seeing it. And additionally, what us as your trainers want is if you're doing the repetitions, but say, for example, and this is an old school way or technique for working with resource guarding, but classically conditioning. My dog's working on a bone. I'm going to approach, drop a treat, and walk away. Approach, drop a treat, and walk away. Classically conditioned that while my dog works on a bone, I'm approaching to drop a treat and walk away. It classically conditions that when this person approaches, something good's going to happen. There is a lot of work and repetition that goes into this. But for example, say we're using this. My dog is working on a bone. I approach and my dog feels conflict. I drop a treat and walk away. I repeat this process, and every time I do this, my dog still feels conflict, but eats
Hmm.
the cookie, but still feels conflict.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is teaching my dog to continue feeling conflict when I approach.
Yes.
Now, if you
Ye-
record these sessions and send it to us or your lovely trainers, and your trainer can see your dog is still
mhm.
feeling conflict, then the work you do in the future is going to be more beneficial for both you and your dog.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things about training in general is that you always want to reassess and see if it's working.
Mhm.
Because if it's not working, then you're just spinning your wheels and, like you said, possibly making it worse.
Well, and even just going with this example of classically conditioning racehorse guarding, right?
Mhm.
We as people understand linearity is the term
Yeah.
I'm going to use. We want this to be 2 + 2 makes 4, 4 + 2 makes 6. We're
It's got to go
working our
just
way
this
up.
way. Yeah.
Resource guarding does not work like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
think about it with me. I just had a very lovely cup of coffee, right? If this was higher value, if I was having a bad day and someone approached and I thought they were going to take it, like I'm going to feel conflict when any other day, yeah, go ahead, take my coffee.
Right. Right.
Our dogs are allowed to have bad days. And if
Hmm.
you, as the trainer, human friend, I don't know, any label we want. Right?
A lot of
I
labels.
want to say parent, but I know that parent is even getting like a weird attachment to it with dogs. But if you, as the person working through this, don't accept that your dog is having a bad day, you're going to make all your work that much harder.
Oh, I totally agree. And we got to think about the environment, what's happened, what's going on around them at the time. It's, like I said, there's so many parts to the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I love your point with this dog and how it took you 4 sessions with them to
Yeah,
work on the
because
working.
she was diligent and she broke it down small enough, and I said,
Exactly.
and I coached her along the way. So every time I came, she had made progress and we
Mhm,
were able to just push right through it.
mhm.
No, it
Now,
was really impressive.
and we were talking a little about this in the prep for this podcast, but the general consensus when dealing with resource guarding is using more of an operant approach, right?
Yes, yeah, for the most part. Or yeah, desensitizing, operant.
What I mean by that is the learner has in the techniques that we've been using, and for example, I'm going to use Leslie McDevitt's request to approach training. The techniques that we find work the quickest, give the animals the most agency, are ones where they can say, yes, please take this from me. I want you to take this from me. And the way we work on that essentially is we don't even have time to even go into all the subtleties of this request to approach, but let's make it a human example. If I'm working on a glass of wine and Camille wants to take it, she's got to wait for me to look at her and say, yes, please take it. And we can train our dogs to give us those default behaviors or those behaviors to say, yes, I'm ready for you to continue. And with that agency, we can teach them how to give up their resources, how to share their resources, other things like that along the lines.
Like a start button. Like, hey,
Exactly.
it's okay. It's
Yes.
okay. Go ahead and do it.
And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
I love
that,
them.
yeah, and I think that the majority of my training is incorporating start buttons in some type because, and so sorry, we're going down the rabbit hole of labels, but a start button, for example, is the learner's way of saying, yes, I'm ready. Yes, I want to continue. So say I'm working on taking a bully stick from Pluto and I'm teaching him a chin rest. I will not approach until his chin is on the chair. And if his
Mhm.
chin comes up from the chair, I'm not approaching again. He has learned that when his head stays on the chair, I can take this from him and I will give him a better things. We work our way through that.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the techniques that most professionals are using with resource guarding now have a component of the learner saying, yes, I'm ready for this to continue.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
we rely solely on classical conditioning, there's a lot more finesse that goes into it. There's a lot more of honestly patience that goes into it.
Yeah, true.
And I think even more so, there are times that our dogs are resource guarding and we don't even know it's happening. And then it's, if we're trying to help them avoid this feeling and we don't even know they're feeling the feeling, well, our hands are tied behind our back, aren't they? um, all right. What are some of your favorite techniques as far as resource guarding goes? Or do you have anything to add as far as like the operant classical line? I know that's I may not have explained it very
Well, well, so sometimes I do make the classical approach, walking past the dog's bowl, tossing a treat and keeping on going. That's a classical approach. That's making an association of I come forward, something good happens, I'm going to leave,
Mhm.
right? So that's just an association. It definitely have used it. I mean, I have to use it.
Right. You gotta start
Um,
something.
and that was kind of where we started with this one dog that we worked with. And but he very quickly was like, oh, okay, all right, I can handle that. And that's why then we moved to, okay, well, now we're going to sit beside you while you have it, and we're just going to give you good stuff, give you good
Well,
stuff.
I will venture to say that classical approach that you're talking about, right? It's got a plateau. There's
Yes,
gonna
it
be a
does.
point where the
Absolutely.
learner knows
Once
that,
you make that association, then
yes,
you need to move to the operant part. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And really, I wish that it didn't. I wish that I could just use this easy. I approach, I drop a treat, I walk away. I approach, I drop a treat, walk away. I trade, I share, and all these things. But at some
And
point, it's got to get harder.
but some dogs do. Some dogs can do that,
Some
right?
dogs, yes.
Some dogs can't. It's
I will say
just,
I'm not a patient person.
oh,
I
I'm not either.
I struggle with using classical conditioning to the end
Mhm.
because I always want to rush it.
Patiently enough. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think just like it's human, I think,
Mhm.
honestly.
All right. So with that said, I do want to talk about the technique of sharing.
Okay.
Because so sharing, for example, is another technique we use where you give the dog something else if you're taking a resource away. This is your resource guarding prevention 101. Never take anything from your dog without giving them something else.
Like a trade.
Yes, a trade. The finer points of the trade that are frequently overlooked is what you're trading with needs to be more valuable to the dog than
Hmm.
what you're taking from the dog.
Right.
And the reason I say this is I've had a lot of amazingly well-meaning clients say, well, I gave them kibble and I took their bone. They should be fine, right? No. If you are taking my
Wine
100
and gave
liter
you
wine
water.
and give me high C, I'm going to look at you like you're crazy,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, and think about it over time. If you are trying with your best intention to say, well, I traded them for everything, but you're trading them carrots and taking away bacon, they're going to hate carrots so much because it means they're losing their bacon.
So I oftentimes try not to do the taking part.
Hmm.
And that's where we went with that dog. We took it right in front of him and held it close to him, put the peanut butter on it and gave it back to him. So it made it better than what he had. Um, Even when I teach a drop it, I don't want to teach that I'm taking something from them,
Hmm.
right? I and for example, when I teach a drop it, I teach don't worry about the thing they dropped, worry about loving on the dog and tell them what a fantastic dog they are,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Just leave that thing on the ground because I don't want that whole taking. I don't want drop it to mean that I'm going to take it from you.
I love
I
that.
want I want drop it to mean that something great's going to happen,
I think that is a really
and you
great
get it
point.
back.
No, absolutely.
And
And
let's face it, we do have to take things
and
sometimes. It can be a
exactly,
sock, or I mean, that absolutely has to happen.
exactly.
It's life. But those few times that we absolutely have to take
Mhm.
it can be negated by all the times that we are so thrilled for that dog that he dropped his bone and we love you, love you, love you. Good job. Here, have your bone back. You know?
I think this is such a huge piece of the puzzle in the sense of where's your bank account? Every time you take
Yes.
something from the dog,
Yep.
you're taking a $300 withdrawal. Anytime you trade or just give them a cookie while they get to keep it, you're doing a $5 deposit.
Hmm.
Recognize those withdrawals are so much more expensive than your deposits, and you need to have so many more deposits in order for your dog not create a negative association with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a difficult one because say you're working on a bully stick, right?
Right.
Pluto showed me at a very young age that we will not be trading for the nubs of bully sticks where he will choke. So
Yeah.
he taught me at a very young age his bully sticks will be in Kong so that he doesn't get to eat the nub. You
Hmm.
know, that's going to be my rule of one. The first time he showed me such intensity, resource guarding, something like that, I realized I'm not having this conversation every time I give you a bully stick. So this is my management moving forward.
Sure.
I think, yeah, no, absolutely. It's a learning thing.
It is. It absolutely is. And, in that same regard, when you think about a training plan, you don't go straight for the bully stick, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to use something low value that he doesn't even want to guard in the first place to
Hmm.
show him that I'm not a threat, to show him that I can give him something better. And that's, that those are the little technicalities of training plan. And that's again, why we say get a qualified certified trainer to help you with behavior, because there are so many tiny little things that go into a training plan, and you can make it worse, you can get hurt, there are a million things you can mess up, but if you get a good qualified trainer, someone who knows what they're doing, you can limit how long it takes to do it, and you can get it done right the first time.
What I will say to that though is resource guarding is one of those things that never goes away. It
Mhm.
never goes away. And I'm saying this so that one, please take the word fix out of your vocabulary when dealing with dog behavior, because there is no fixing dog behavior.
Right.
Two, maintenance, 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 maintenance. I
Hmm.
cannot for the rest of my dog's life reward them for being a good boy. I cannot for the rest of my dog's life too much. Well, like too much, I guess I should have said. I don't know if I said that in the last moment, but I cannot for the rest of my dog's life reward them too much for giving me something.
Hmm.
I
Right.
mentioned in my last podcast that Pluto brings me random stuff when he's bored and he drops it because I have rock solid out behavior. And when he's bored, he brings me things, right? I am going to continue to feed that for the rest of his life because say I make the decision that he is an adult now, his frontal lobe is closing in June,
Right.
be able to not need treats when we trade, I'm gonna have fallout.
Hmm.
At any age, if the learner realizes there is no more reinforcement for their behavior, extinction will happen in many, many cases, in most cases.
Well, I mean, if you kept going to work and all of a sudden your paycheck stopped, do you really want to keep going to work? Are you really gonna,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? It's reinforcement for your work. It's yes,
Now
maintenance.
the caveat, no, because Camille, like really, I think about this frequently. What is reinforcing for the learner, right?
Hmm.
So
Sure.
with that example, say we hit the lottery, right?
Okay.
And we have all the money in the world. You and I love what we do. We would still
Yeah.
be going to clients' homes. We would
Yeah.
still be doing our job, but the reinforcement wouldn't be the money so much anymore,
Right. Totally
right?
agree.
And I do think that we get our dogs doing things for our relationship, doing things because it's fun to work with us. And I do think that becomes a component where we could fade some treats in our communication with our dogs in older age. But once again, the learner tells me if that's the case. If
Right.
I am no longer using treats to reinforce behavior because I now think that we have the relationship that they don't need it, and the behavior starts going away, I definitely read the situation wrong. The
Right.
reinforcement isn't there. So we're not going to say very simply that you use treats until you don't need treats because now blah, right? Like, no, the learner gets to decide that. And the finesse that you just mentioned with Camille in the sense of like, if your work stopped paying you, if you had an extremely intelligent boss that could still make sure that you're getting your needs met, you'd still come and work in some
Hmm.
sense. And that's what makes this job fun for me,
Yeah.
is that whole dynamic.
Figuring out that whole, yeah,
Understand. Yes, I do need
it's
so
awesome.
more continuing education there, but I want it. Um,
It's kind of why I switched to behavior cases, honestly, because I love figuring out the puzzle, figuring out the environment and the dog and the family and how can I help them be successful? I love figuring that out. It's honestly, that's why I focused on behavior. I love it.
it's so dynamic and it just keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
Um, Are there any other points of resource guarding, or do you think that we covered basically our topics for the day?
I think we covered a lot of it. We talked about what it is. We've talked about what it looks like. So if you anybody listening might see this in your dog, that you can understand what it looks like. We've talked about what it's not,
Let me
right?
really quickly interrupt what it looks
Uh-huh.
like, because if you and I go on a case, we could assume where resource guarding is happening,
Uh-huh.
but aggression looks like aggression, right?
Hmm.
So my point in saying this is if you have a dog that's snapping, snarling, growling, and you don't know if it's resource guarding or anything else, that communication means reach out to us or another professional in your area.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Good point.
regardless if you think that this aggression is as a result of resource guarding or some other unknown reason, reach out to a professional.
Yes.
Go ahead and
I
continue.
totally agree. I totally agree.
We
I
usually do.
mean, if you see your dog growl and get upset about something, ask for help. Find help somewhere because we all need it. And that's just it's a prime. You need somebody qualified who thinks about all these little pieces that we're trying to put together here.
Exactly. All right, so go ahead, continue. We talked about what it looks
We
like.
talk, yep, we talked about a little bit about the factors of prognosis,
Hmm.
owner compliance, and number of triggers and the bite inhibition, what that looks like, impulsivity, and it's we've talked about a couple of cases and the way that we worked them,
Hmm.
but again, every dog is individual, and just because those worked for one client, it doesn't mean I did it for that client yesterday, because
Exactly.
you know that dog 2 years ago was perfect, and the owner was perfect. She was into training and she loved it, and my owner next week might not be that into training.
What's
um
fun for me is how you and I are going to be doing this differently in just even 2 months from now. You know?
right.
And it may not even be that different, but like, because we are constantly learning, we all are constantly learning. The techniques we use
Mhm.
today are different than techniques we use in a few months or not, you know? So it
Oh,
is,
and I love learning.
isn't it fun?
Yes, it is.
So I do, I think, and if you
All
have any
right.
questions, please feel free to reach out to us on our Facebook page. The notes will be in the links will be in the show notes. Upcoming conferences, the IABC Foundation, that's the one we're
Yes.
mentioning again.
Yeah,
That is
that's
the
gonna be
first
fabulous.
in Nashville.
Yeah, first through the 3rd of May.
And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to reach out to on our Facebook page. If there's any topics you want us to cover, feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
I believe we did it.
All right.
Is that the way?
The cookie crumbles.
I believe so. Thanks for
Thanks everybody for being here.
next
We really appreciate it.
time.